Welcome to the immersion project for the audio envelope section. One of the things we're going to be talking about today is just focusing on what the audio envelope is and kind of taking a look at how it's different from one source to another. So as you can see, we have a Pro Tools session up. In this Pro Tools session, there's several different files, and they're layered in a way where we can cycle through them pretty quickly and take a look at the differences between them. What I'm going to do real quickly is just kind of play a few of these, and it looks like some of these kind of overlap. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to solo this one. So this is this low slide. So let's take a listen to a few of these, and then we'll talk about what they're doing. So that first one was a guitar slide. You can see there's a kick. Here's a snare. Here's a snare off a live kit. A group of drums together. And that last one was a sampled kick and snare. This one is a live kick and snare. And this is going to roll right into the bass. This last one was that lead guitar that you might have heard in the last project. And then this is a string ensemble. This is sampled, so it's technically a MIDI string patch from Native Instruments. So your big task here is to really kind of talk about and be able to communicate what really the differences are in the ADSR. So let's go take a look at it. That means we're going to have to zoom in pretty far to have a peek at what's taking place. Remembering that the ADSR is the attack, the initial decay, the sustain, and the release. And so for things like drums and percussive instruments, they're also known as transients, typically have a quick attack, almost no sustain, and it pretty much is from attack, it just goes to the initial decay all the way to the release. So you'll notice that in the attack phase, it's on its way up to its strongest point, and you can see like that's the biggest part of the wave, the highest, tallest part of the wave. Remembering that the vertical is the dynamic, so that this way represents our volume, and the horizontal represents our frequency. And since it's a multitude of frequencies, we have a complex wave. You can see it kind of moves and shifts, but you can see the amplitude dies off. So if we're looking at the volume here, here's our attack phase. And if we were to chop this up, there's our attack phase. And pretty much from here to the end is, pretty much all release. I mean, you could really call this whole section all release. You could say this is the attack, and this is the release. Sorry, minus this. Now, if we go look at that guitar, it's different here. So this low slide, I'll blow this up just a touch. I'll bring this a bit bigger so you can see this. The attack phase here is this front end here until it really hits its peak. And you could actually consider it all the way. I think maybe this is the loudest part right here. Actually, it hits pretty loud right there too. But until it starts to die off, we're still in the attack phase. So here's our attack phase. And most of the attacks that you're going to hear are going to be kind of percussive from a lot of things. Then as we move on, we have our initial decay until we hit like a flat line sustain. You can see it kind of clearly. At about this mark here, I'd say almost right here, almost all these volumes are just sustaining at the same level, and then they start to slowly die down. So if we zoom out, you can see how they tail off. But notice the majority of that sustain, look at that, it almost all looks the same there. So if we separate that again, here's our attack phase, here's our decay phase, here's our sustain phase, and then we have the release. Now there's a little bit of a slide off, which actually grows another attack right here, and then you start to see like that it actually goes to the release here, and that the way that that's performed. So right here. Now, if we were to look at a few of these other instruments, you'll see the majority of these percussive things, again, are pretty much attack and release. So this is the snare drum. And there's not a whole lot else going on. You know, there is some, I guess you could say there's some sustaining in the shell, but the majority of the time that's just considered a release. And you can see it pretty clearly. It's pretty evident once you go there. But then you'll notice something different happens as we go to stuff like the bass. Like the bass is so strong in sustain land. It's like all attack and sustains pretty much. So you see if like we go here, we can see just very mild like there's the initial attack, and then it's almost like there's no initial decay. It almost kind of just goes into the sustain, and you can kind of see it here as well. You know, the attack's pretty fast, and then you could say here's the attack. I mean, it's fast. So if you say there's the attack, maybe here's the initial decay. You can see it kind of declining. See it heading down. And then as we get to this point, it's like all sustain. I mean, there's a point where it's like these are almost all the same. And you could almost say that this maybe goes to a little further. This maybe goes to about here. Sorry, maybe about here for that initial decay. And then here's our sustain. It's like all sustain. And it just sustains and that's what's wonderful about the bass. The bass just has so much power in it, and it just sustains until the next attack phase comes. So what's interesting about this is the sustain is actually connected to the next attack. There's no release. So the release doesn't happen until the full end of the line, the very end of the line. So we go listen to that. I mean, you kind of hear why when you hear the bass itself, what it's doing. Just the way that it moves, it really gives it that. But that's why it sounds the way that it does, because it's ADSR. The envelope is specifically doing that job. If we go look at the guitar, you see some of the same stuff, although like you can see some of the mechanics of the movement taking place. So like if we listen to the way this is, like each time the notes are transitioning, there's a bunch of attack, attack, attack. You'll hear how they go. So in that first line, there's actually two notes. There's one right here. There's one more right here. And so like that first one's going boom, and that slide up boom. Makes it all look like it's just one big sustain after this initial attack, and that attack goes fast. So one of the big things you see here is just that each one of these has such a unique position. The envelopes are all just fantastically different, and the envelope is what makes that sound. So as you're working through your questions, you're going to talk about which ones have fast attacks, slow sustains, slow releases. The slow sustains are definitely in the basses. The faster release, the guitar has a fast release there, and that bass had a really fast release. But so do the drums. So that's what makes each one of these roles different and their sounds different, and that's what makes them unique and absolutely wonderful to work with.